The Collection of Ghost Stories. Volume 1. A novel by Neil Wesson. Chapter 14. Gone West. The automatic garage door glided down into its frame. The white paint reflected the red glow from the black BMW's brake lights. Moments later, the car pulled out of the drive and onto the main street that ran through the village of Walkington. The journey to work was pretty much the same every day for Alexander Morgentaler. The journey through the village was slow, the recently laid speed humps played hell with his front valence. At the traffic lights he, as normal, turned left and took the undulating road to the crossroads, then as always turned right. Some days the eternal monotony of the route oppressed him. Now in his early 40s he knew that this was his life for at least another 15 years. It made him think of the character Reginald Perrin and his monotonous life. Could he also come up with a unique solution to his boredom as the fictional character had done? The winding road brought him out onto the Westwood pasture. In the distance he could see his destination, the market town of Beaverley. At its heart stood the minster reaching skyward, dwarfing all the other buildings. A week ago, the Westwood had been covered in a white blanket of snow. The panoramic views from that high vantage point could have graced any Christmas card. On the other hand, it made driving treacherous. As he sped down the tree-lined road, he passed the spot where it had happened. Never had he told anyone of the experience. If he had tried to tell the tale, well, it couldn't be told. He himself didn't know exactly what had happened that night. It had happened during last year's Indian summer. The Westwood was a hive of activity during the day. The sound of golf balls being hit echoed around the west end of the pasture as the players trooped around Beaverley's exclusive golf club. The cows grazed while children flew all manner of colorful kites and ate the various products from the ice cream van. As he drove home that winter's night 6 months previous, the pasture was dark and cold. It was late at night and no one was around. Traveling up the hill, the headlights of the car blazed into the darkness, the full beam illuminating the trees on either side with an eerie glow. Something caught his eye. As if from nowhere, a figure was standing by the side of the road. He was sure no one had been there seconds before. It was just someone waiting for a lift, he thought to himself, no need to stop. As the black BMW approached, the figure stepped out into the road. Alexander was given no time to react. The body hit the wing of the car, tossing it over the roof. In the rearview mirror, Alex saw it land on the road. The wheels screeched to a halt, each tire leaving a black rubber skid mark on the road's surface. He jumped out of the car, running to the rear. As he did, he fished around in the pocket of his jacket, feeling for his mobile phone. Whoever this poor person was, he would need an ambulance immediately. Taking the phone out of the pocket, the screen shone in the darkness. He quickly started to dial the number with his thumb, 999, then stopped. Where was the body? The road was empty, the grass verges were clear also. Slowly he walked to the spot where the body had fallen. Crouching down, he examined the road. No trace of anything being there was visible, no blood, no scuff marks, nothing. Slowly he walked back to his car and examined the offside wing. Though it was dark, enough light from the headlamp reflected off his camel hair coat to see the wing. Rubbing his hand along it, it was clear to him that there were no chips or dents in the panel. Surely an impact such as that should have left some kind of mark. What should he do now? Should he go home? To leave the scene of an accident was a crime, but then, what accident? Had there even been an accident? Had he imagined it all? The stresses of work preyed on his mind somewhat at the moment. In his job as a solicitor, he would have to read many last will and testaments. Had his worries manifested themselves in his subconscious? Eventually, after convincing himself no one was around and it was all in his head, he continued home. That was almost 6 months ago now. Every night as he drove past that spot, he would try not to look at the point where it had happened, but he would. Not every night, just occasionally he would see the figure standing there. Sometimes it would step out in front of him, on other occasions, the figure would remain by the roadside. Once at work, Alex set about his normal day tasks. The pile of mail that sat in the inbox was perpetual. So at 9:30 that night he decided enough was enough. The day had been bright and warm for the time of year, and he had missed it stuck in that office all day. As he put his briefcase in the boot of his car, he looked up at the full moon shining through the only gap in a cloudy sky. The clouds that blotted out the stars looked as though they could burst into a torrent of snow at any moment. The streets of the town were quiet as the black BMW pulled out onto the main road. The first flakes of snow were beginning to fall. Shivering, he turned up the heating. A warming blast of air shot out of the vents at either side of the steering wheel. So, would he see the ghost tonight? He had come to the conclusion that it must have been a phantom that he had hit that night. As someone who had been hit by a car before and was reliving the accident. That hypothesis was not an uncommon one in the world of paranormal research, or so he was led to believe, and that was another point. Up to that experience he was an unbeliever, but now his opinion had changed somewhat. Would he see it tonight, and what would it do? Stand and watch, or step out in front of him? Whichever it was going to be, he had become blasé to the sequence of events. As he drove up the hill, the trees glistened white with frost. They were the only points of reference in a black world. Snowflakes floated down intermittently, leaving small watermarks on the windscreen. Alex took a tentative glance to the right-hand verge of the road. No one living or other was there tonight. Then panic. The front end of the car started to shake and bump uncontrollably. He hit the brakes. Slowly the car came back under control. He steered it off the road and onto the grass verge. Breathing a sigh of relief, he examined the front end of the vehicle. A tire had blown out. He got back into the car and took out his mobile phone. The first entry in the phone book was the AA. He pressed the dial key. The spare wheel in the boot was all ready to be fitted. In fact, it had never seen the light of day before. Alex, though, was a professional. He didn't pay a yearly subscription to get his own hands dirty. It also had to be taken into consideration that he didn't know one end of a jack from the other. It would be an hour before a mechanic could reach him. An hour, he could freeze to death in an hour. He sat there looking out into the night. Not wanting to drain the battery, he turned the lights off, but left the radio playing. He listened with interest to the moral maze, but after only 10 minutes the program finished. Nothing else on the radio interested him, so he turned it off. Several times he had the feeling that someone outside was watching him. All around was inky black. To his left, the solitary glow of a light in the stand of Beverly Race Course shone like a pinprick in the night. Was someone out there watching him? He was all alone in the middle of a large expanse of open ground. Paranoia had set in. Occasionally he turned on the headlights only for his peace of mind. It was on one of these moments that he realized where he was. The car had come to rest at the point where the ghost would watch him drive past. He pressed down the locking stud on the driver's door. The central locking licked as the rest of the doors automatically locked. The temperature was starting to drop now. The interior of the car was getting colder. Shivering, he wrapped his overcoat tightly around him. Turning on the engine activated the heater. Warm blasts of air circulated around. This waned though once the engine was shut off. At last he saw salvation. In the rearview mirror he could see two lights coming up the road. At last. He said to himself. The lights drew closer as he got out of the car to greet them. As the vehicle approached, he stepped out into the road, so the driver would be in no doubt that this was the car he had come to the rescue of. The vehicle didn't stop. The offside wing hit his leg, throwing him up over the roof. He landed in the middle of the road, his body broken and twisted. The wheels of the black BMW screeched to a halt, each tire leaving a black rubber skid mark on the road surface. The driver got out and had a look back to where the body lay, before returning to the car and driving off. The end.